Today we're going to take a look at whether the world is ready for bike pump espresso. We have an interesting new espresso maker on the menu. It's super affordable, can do pressure profiling, and it has all the benefits of manual espresso without you having to do any kind of hard work or pulling any levers. Yes, we are talking about this one here, a new espresso maker called Mepresso 58 that is powered by this bike pump here. So this is basically the same kind of pump that you would use to fill a soccer ball or the tires of your moped if it's a little bit flat. This one here can do the job, and allegedly it can also produce espresso. So that's what we're going to investigate today. So how does it work? Well, you fill some coffee in here, some hot water, and then you connect this hose here, and now we have a way to create pressure inside the brew head. But before we get into the nitty-gritty, I just want to give you a little bit more context. So actually, we have seen a similar kind of device a few years back. This espresso maker was called the X-Bar. The X-Bar was actually a quite prominent project on Kickstarter, and it got funded pretty quickly. Unfortunately, most of the backers never received any espresso maker, and I think to this day they still haven't heard anything from the creators of the project. Back then I actually also received a unit of the X-Bar, but in the end I decided not to publish a review, and that was because I simply didn't really feel like it was a very good product, and I didn't really see it as more as a curiosity that was interesting in theory, but in daily use it was just a little bit too annoying. So the main problem was that the device was created to run on these small CO2 cartridges, and you could probably get 2 or 3 or 4 shots out of one cartridge. So it was a pretty wasteful espresso maker. Besides that, it also had a few other small quirks. The threading was really bad, it was difficult to screw into place, you really had to preheat it well, and overall I just didn't think it made for a very compelling user experience. I think the Mepresso is quite similar to the X-Bar in many ways, but for me it's just a lot more interesting as a daily driver. It's something I could see myself make espresso with every morning without getting super frustrated. This one here is still a pre-production unit. Actually, this is the second unit that I received. A while back I got a prototype and it was not quite perfect. You could still see what was cool about it, but it needed to be improved in a few key ways. And actually I talked to the brand about this, and they were very interested in hearing what I had to say, all the suggestions I came with. Now, normally this is not really something I do. I just review products and then try to keep minimal contact with the producers. But in this instance I got a little bit carried away because it was pretty clear that with a few small tweaks this would be a pretty cool device. First thing to notice is that the device packs down into this travel case here. It's also pretty sturdy, so if you want to go on a road trip, it's a nice option to have. In this particular instance, the device also came with the bike pump, but I believe this is an add-on, so if you want this you have to pay a little bit extra. If you already have a pump like this at home, you don't need to buy an extra one. The pump connects to the brew head via this little device here, and luckily there's also a built-in pressure release valve here, which is quite cool because it means that you can stop the pressure in here right away, so it will just run out from this. Next up we have this stand here, and there's also a drip tray. Well, basically it's just an oversized rubber mat, but it's nice to have and it gets the job done. The stand also has a built-in pressure gauge, and this is very similar to what you see on Breville machines. It's actually very precise because on the electrical bike pump you also have a real-time pressure displayed, and if you look at the two, they will basically show the same. So maybe if you have an older bike pump, then it's still nice to have the pressure gauge here on the stand, but in theory you could look at either one, and that will be sufficient. The brew head works a lot the same way as the Cafelat robot. So you have a dispersion screen here, you add your espresso coffee and you tamp it, place the screen on top, and then you add the boiling water, lock in the portafilter into the brew head, and then you start the extraction. So this design I haven't really seen on any other espresso maker besides the robot, but it's one that works pretty well in daily life. Another cool little design hack is that there's actually a WDT tool hidden inside the portafilter handle. This is actually a pretty good distribution tool. There's a lot of the stuff that you can buy on Amazon or AliExpress. They kind of suck, but this one here works pretty well. And normally it's a thing that's quite annoying to have on your espresso station. So hiding it inside the portafilter handle is actually a really good idea. Then the device also comes with a tamper. And this again is a 2-in-1 design. So you have this tamper here. And then on the other side there's a leveler. Not everybody wants to use a leveler, but nonetheless it's nice to have everything. So basically you can do your distribution and your puck preparation. You don't even need a funnel to add the grounds or do WDT. You can do it inside here without anything, and it will not be messy. So overall, I think this is a pretty nice workflow. Oh, and by the way, I should also say that the device actually comes with this one here. And I think that is if you want to use CO2 cartridges, you can hook it up with that. But it does work well with a bike pump, so that's what we're going to focus on today. But now let's brew a shot, and then you'll get a much better idea about the pros and cons of this device. So as you may already know, preheating is really important with manual espresso makers, and this one is no different. Actually, the portafilter/basket is quite heavy and sturdy, so you really need to preheat it well. I find the best technique is just to place it on top of your kettle like so. It can actually rest here pretty easily because it has this fin, this lock here at the end. So just place it, turn on your kettle, and then let it steam up along with the water. And then you can grind your coffee while this is heating. Okay, now this one is really hot. I'm just gonna wipe it off here on the inside, a little bit quick one on the outside. If there's any residual moist, better to get that away. And then I have my dosing cup here, and it fits perfectly on top, like so. I got 17 grams. Screw out the WDT tool. Just give it a quick fluff up, level it, and a good tamp. And now you place the puck screen on top. Just boil the water, make sure we get it as hot as possible, because that's really the key for manual espresso to succeed. If it's not hot enough, then you'll be able to taste it in the shot. The body will be kind of thin and astringent. So if you want that sweetness, that fullness, you really need to hit it with a lot of heat. Okay, and I think we're just about ready. I'm gonna add the boiling hot water. Okay, just leave a ½ centimeter at the top. Log it in, and I have 17 grams, so I'm gonna go for around 35 to 40-ish. Let's see if I can control it to the point. Tear the scale. Okay, and here we go. A little bit of pre-infusion. Now we're just holding it at 2 bars, the pre-infusion, and now there's a steady flow. Now we're just ramping up. 15 grams. I'm aiming for around 37. Let's see. You can see the pressure slowly declining. Okay, and the way you stop the shot is by pressing the pressure valve, and that can actually give you pretty good control. There might be a bit of residual dropping, so if you have an extra cup, it's a good idea just to put that in. But now this shot looks actually pretty damn amazing. Let's try a little sip. Honestly, this is just a pretty well extracted shot. It's got a nice balance of sweetness, you got the body, you have a decent amount of clarity due to that kind of slow ramp down. So overall, I will just say, yeah, it's hard to find anything to pinpoint that I want to improve. I have had some not as good shots, but it seems that's mostly been down to not having sufficient brew pressure for the roast degree. So obviously, if you're brewing a very dark roast, then you can get by with less preheating, maybe just pouring some water through a single time. But if you want to go into that medium light roast territory, then you really need to preheat this one as well as you can, and then you will get good shots. I have measured TDS and extraction percentage of the shots, and it seems to produce espresso just like a regular pump machine. As for the cleaning, it's also pretty easy. Normally I'll just get the excess water out by using this one here. And when I see the first bubbles, I'm going to release the pressure. If you do too much, so you'll have a lot of bubbles in the end, it will actually almost make it more difficult to clean, because that will make the grounds stick to the bottom of the basket. But I find if you release the pressure right as the bubbles come out, then usually you'll have a puck that's pretty easy to knock out. I think it's a pretty interesting espresso maker, especially if you consider yourself an espresso geek and you have various manual espresso devices, and you also have a real pump machine. If you're kind of a collector or aficionado, I guess it's pretty unique, and it will probably going to fit into your collection. Of course, it's a little bit of an unusual way that the pressure works with this machine, where you will kind of have to go up to your peak and then just descend from there. It's difficult to hold the pressure at the same level. Of course, you can turn it on, turn it off, and also play with the setting here. But overall, I find the most predictable, easy way to use it is to have a little bit of a pre-infusion, and then you just ramp it up to your target, let's say 7 or 9 bars, and then you just slowly descend from there until you get to your target shot volume. Of course, you have some of the same pros as manual espresso makers in general, so that means that you don't really have to worry about scale. You can use any type of water, you can use really hard water, experiment with that stuff. You don't have to worry too much about the cleaning. The price level is also a lot more affordable. Preheating is the main downside for this espresso maker, and also for most other manual espresso makers, but it's also pretty annoying to wait for an electric espresso machine to heat up. This is something that can easily take 15 to 20 minutes. So in that regard, is it really that bad? I'm not sure. They could have made this design a little bit better. The robot has a clever solution where the basket is a little bit separated from the basket holder, and that means that you have less thermal mass that you have to worry about preheating. Here you really have to preheat the whole thing, which does make it a little bit more difficult to get up to temperature. Actually, I've seen that the brand is currently working on a different solution for the puck screen, and it looks kind of interesting. If it works as intended, it will probably make preheating a little bit less of a concern, and it will also protect the puck from that early water that you add on in the beginning of the brewing cycle. Some of that water, when you're brewing this way, it's going to circumvent the screen and then kind of wet the puck a little bit too early, and this will give you more control over when the puck is getting saturated, and it will also protect the heat of the water a little bit from the sides of the basket. So I know this is a little bit of a geeky discussion, but I have some hope that this will help with the overall workflow and preheating. One more thing I should say is that this is still a pre-production model. The final one is going to look a lot like this, but it will have a slightly longer cord, and that means that the positioning of the bike pump will be less awkward, so you can kind of lay it down next to the brewer itself. Also, the pressure release valve will be moved up closer, so it's in a more easy to reach position, and that is also going to make the workflow a little bit nicer. Currently, the brand is taking pre-orders, and it will come with a pretty good discount. The first 50 to sign up will get a $100 discount, and I think the next 50 will get $50 off. So if you're one of those first, it will be a pretty good deal overall. I don't think there are many manual espresso makers that offer a lot more value for the money in this price range. The brand itself, Maestri House, I didn't really know about them before they reached out to me about this espresso device here, but it seems to be a legit brand. And from my communication with them, I feel pretty certain that this one is really going to come out to the people who buy it. So this is not a Kickstarter project. This is just something you buy, you pre-order it, and then you can expect it to get it There's nothing in small print like there is with the Kickstarter projects in general. So I'm curious to hear, did you back the X-Bar, and what do you think about this device here? Is the world really ready for Bike Pump Espresso? Let me know down in the comment section below. And if you're interested in more about these geeky manual espresso makers, then I'll leave a video here with one of my current favorites, one that's also really good for travel and home use. And then you can just click that video and then I'll see you over there.